I moved back into my childhood home 10 years after strange things happened here. I thought it would be good for my son and me. I was 34, a graphic designer, and a single mom. After my divorce, I wanted stability. I hoped this house would give that to us. The first night, everything was quiet. I unpacked boxes and set up toys. My son Daniel played in the living room. Then I heard a soft tapping sound from the attic. I shook it off, thinking it was just the old pipes. Old houses make noises, and I had more important things to do. After a few days, the tapping grew louder, turning into scratching. I felt uneasy but tried not to let it bother me. Daniel seemed happy, but then he started talking about a new friend he played with. He called her the housekeeper. I froze. That sent a chill through me. The housekeeper had disappeared years ago, but I didn't want to alarm him. I tried to push the thought away as I noticed small things. My keys were on the kitchen counter instead of my desk. Toys moved from the living room to my room. I convinced myself it was the chaos of moving. But at night, I felt like I wasn't alone. I woke up sometimes, knowing that someone was there, just out of sight. I checked the locks a few times. It felt wrong. One evening, Daniel told me more about his friend. He said she looked like the woman who used to help us in the house. My heart sank. I remembered the stories my parents whispered about the housekeeper. I thought, was Daniel imagining things? Or was something really happening? The night came when the scratching was louder than usual. It sounded desperate. I crept up the attic stairs, feeling my heart race. Each step made the air feel colder. I reached for the doorknob, and my hand shook. I hesitated, afraid of what I'd find. I pushed the door open. My heart raced as I stared into the dark. There was nothing there. Just darkness and silence. Relief washed over me, but then I heard laughter echoing from behind. I turned to find Daniel standing in the hallway. He looked so happy. "Can I go play with her?" he asked, his eyes shining. I froze. My blood ran cold. I glanced around, but there was nobody in the attic. I felt sick. "Who, honey?" I asked, my voice trembling. "The housekeeper, Mom. I like her." He smiled without a care in the world. I shook my head, trying not to panic. "No, sweetheart. She isn't here." But Daniel only giggled. He turned and started to walk away. I wanted to tell him to stop, to come back. Instead, I stared into the darkness of the attic, my heart pounding. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I felt trapped, caught between the past and what I hoped would be a normal life again. But normal slipped further away. The next few days were a blur. I tried to focus on getting settled, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Daniel was still cheerful, talking more about his friend, the housekeeper. I hated the way her name lingered in the air between us. One night, as I tucked Daniel into bed, he whispered, "Mom, she said I can come play tomorrow." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Who?" I asked, forcing a smile. "The housekeeper," he replied, making it sound so innocent. I shut his door, holding my breath. That night, I lay awake, listening for sounds. The scratching had returned, more frantic now. My heart raced every time I thought of Daniel being near the attic. Just as sleep threatened to overcome me, a loud thump echoed through the house. I jumped out of bed, adrenaline surging. I peered into Daniel's room. He was fast asleep, oblivious to the noise. I stepped out into the hallway, my pulse pounding in my ears. The noise had come from downstairs. With trembling hands, I crept toward the stairs, each step groaning beneath my weight. I reached the bottom and turned to the living room. It was dark, but I could see a faint glow coming from the kitchen. My gut twisted, fear and curiosity competing for control. I hesitated, fighting the urge to run back upstairs. Something drew me forward. When I got to the kitchen doorway, my breath caught. A figure moved by the window, silhouetted by the streetlight. My heart raced. I could see the shape of a woman, her hair long and flowing. I held my breath, trying to convince myself it was my imagination. "Daniel?" I whispered, half hoping he had somehow woken and joined me. But silence answered. The figure turned slightly, and my heart sank. It was too familiar. The woman looked just like the housekeeper from my childhood. Panic surged within me. I stepped back, barely breathing, and when I noticed something on the kitchen table, a faded photo. My hands shook as I picked it up. It showed my parents with the housekeeper standing right beside them, her smile warm and friendly. I realized this was the same woman Daniel had described. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the attic. My heart dropped. I had to decide. Investigate the noise? Or take Daniel and run? Both options felt wrong. The walls felt like they were closing in, and I began to feel trapped once more. Just before I could make a decision, a soft voice echoed through the house, "She's here, come play." I could hardly comprehend the words. I dropped the photo, the glass shattering on the floor. In that moment, I understood, I wasn't just facing the shadow of the past. I was standing at the edge of something far more dangerous. I didn't have much time. I had to find out what this really meant, for Daniel's sake. As I was about to rush back upstairs, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the house into darkness. I felt my breath hitch. Was I ready to confront whatever was lurking in the shadows? I stood in the pitch-black kitchen, straining to hear any other sounds. The eerie silence pressed in around me. My heart thudded in my chest, but the voice still lingered in my mind, "She's here, come play." I took a small step forward, my hand stretched out in front of me, searching for anything that would give me a sense of grounding. I felt the table beneath my fingers, the broken glass from the photo digging into my palm. I pulled my hand back, cursing under my breath. I couldn't let fear stand in my way. Not now, not when Daniel was asleep upstairs. I turned, trying to remember the layout from memory. A cool draft brushed against my skin, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I made my way to the hall, each cautious step amplified in the stillness. I needed to reach Daniel, to keep him safe. As I climbed the first step of the stairs, I heard it again, a soft giggle. It was the kind of sound that should have belonged to children playing but felt wrong, twisted. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. That voice was too close. Shouldn't it be just me and Daniel in this house? I had to be imagining things. But as I reached the top of the stairs, my instincts screamed that I wasn't alone. I crept down the hallway, glancing at Daniel's door. It was slightly ajar, and faint moonlight spilled into the hallway, illuminating my fears. I pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. Daniel lay asleep, his expression blissful and serene. But there was something else. The shadows in the corner seemed to shift. It felt like they reached toward him, hungry. I took a deep breath and stepped into the room. "Daniel," I whispered as quietly as I could. I moved closer, shaking him gently. "Wake up." His eyes fluttered open, and he blinked at me in confusion. "Mom? What's wrong?" I hesitated. How could I tell him what I had heard? I didn't want to frighten him. "It's nothing, sweetheart. I just wanted to check on you." Before he could say anything more, I turned my head back toward the hallway. The temperature had dropped again, and the air felt thick with unease. A flicker of movement caught my eye, near the end of the hallway. I squinted into the darkness and saw the figure again. The woman, standing there, her hair moving as though in a breeze that didn't exist. "Come play with us," she said, her voice echoing. The word sent a chill down my spine. She was beckoning, drawing me in. My instinct was to run, but I stood frozen in place. "Mom, who is that?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling. "Just stay here," I said, my heart racing. I needed to keep Daniel safe, but I couldn't tear my gaze away from the woman. Suddenly, she vanished, leaving only a lingering chill in the air. My pulse thundered in my ears. I felt a strong urge to follow her, to confront whatever she was. But then, I noticed something else. The door to the attic was slightly ajar. I had almost forgotten about it, buried under the weight of everything that had happened. A rumbling sound filled the silence, almost like whispering voices. Something was calling me. I stepped back toward Daniel, but every muscle in my body tightened. I had to know what was happening. "Stay here, Daniel. Don't move," I urged, though a part of me wasn't sure how long that would be enough. Barefoot and trembling, I moved toward the attic door. I had no idea what lay behind it, but I felt I had no choice anymore. If I didn't confront this now, it would only get worse. As I gripped the handle, a loud crash erupted from above, nearly knocking me off my feet. I gasped, terror flooding my veins. This was no longer just about me. It was about Daniel and the secrets swirling in the darkness. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, ready to discover the truth. The attic loomed ahead, filled with dust motes dancing in the faint light filtering from a nearby window. As I stepped inside, the door creaked painfully behind me. The smell of mildew assaulted my senses. My eyes darted around the cluttered space, old furniture draped in sheets, boxes piled high, and memories long buried. My heart raced, fueled by adrenaline. The crash from above still echoed in my ears. I moved forward, every instinct screaming at me to be cautious. Was that figure really gone? I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still watching me. I approached an old trunk in the corner that looked like it had been untouched for years. It was locked, the rusted keyhole gleaming mockingly in the dim light. I could hear Daniel's faint breaths behind me, reminding me that I needed to keep it together. I shifted my focus from the trunk to the window, hoping for a glimpse of the moon outside. That's when I noticed a photograph on the floor, half hidden under a stack of forgotten clothes. I bent down and picked it up. My stomach dropped. The image was of a family I didn't recognize, smiling as if they were unaware of the dark secrets lurking in the corners of the house. A fleeting thought crossed my mind. Had they once lived here? The unsettling giggle echoed again, closer this time. My spine tingled. I turned, feeling the air grow thick, like being submerged underwater. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. Silence engulfed me, but then whispers broke it, soft and unintelligible. They swirled around me, pulling me deeper into the darkness. I looked back at the trunk. "What were you hiding?" I dropped the photograph and knelt before it. I had to know. I found a dusty crowbar in the corner and pried the trunk open. The hinges squealed in protest, but I didn't care. Inside lay an assortment of items: old toys, faded dresses, and a diary. The cover was cracked, but it felt oddly warm in my hands. I ran my fingers over the worn pages and hesitated. The strange voice, the haunting laughter, everything was spiraling out of control. As I flipped through the diary, snippets of someone's life revealed themselves, dark entries filled with fear and desperation. I stopped on a page written in shaky handwriting: "The shadows have come for us. I can't protect them anymore." My breath hitched. There was a mention of a woman, a caregiver who had taken a special interest in the children. My instinct told me that she wasn't just any housekeeper. Suddenly, I heard footsteps creaking on the stairs. I snapped the diary shut, heart racing. I glanced back at Daniel, who still stayed put in the room, oblivious to the tension building around us. But I sensed that something climbed closer, darker, and hungrier. I heard the whispers again, now clearer: come play with us. Then the attic door slammed shut, cloaking me in suffocating darkness. My pulse quickened as I banged on the door, desperation taking hold. Daniel! Help! In that moment, I knew this wasn't just about uncovering the past. A new threat emerged, and time was running out. I needed to escape this silence before whatever was in the shadows reached him. The darkness felt alive, wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. I banged my fists against the door again, panic clawing at my throat. Daniel! But my voice sounded distant, swallowed by the oppressive silence. I turned back to the trunk, desperate for something, anything, that could help me. The diary lay open, pages fluttering slightly as if stirred by a ghostly breeze. I needed answers. I needed to know what had happened in this house, and what had become of its inhabitants. When I reached down to grab the diary, a gust of cold air rushed past me, making the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I froze. Was that the wind? No, it felt too intentional, too alive. The whispers grew louder, surrounding me, come play with us. I fought the urge to scream. Instead, I grabbed a wooden toy from the trunk, a small carved figure of a boy. It felt oddly reassuring in my palm. I stood up, searching the room for an escape route. Maybe there was a way out other than the door. That's when I noticed the window. It was small, but if I could pry it open, I might be able to squeeze through. I dashed over, glancing back at the trunk. What was I letting go? That diary had contained something crucial. Yet, I couldn't afford to linger. I pulled at the window frame, but it wouldn't budge. Panic bubbled up inside me. I slammed both fists against the glass. Daniel! I shouted again, my voice cracking. Each thud seemed to echo, but still nothing. Then I felt it. A cold presence settling behind me. I turned slowly, heart racing once more. The figure was there, just outside the shadow's edge, a woman, her face obscured, but her eyes glinting with an unnatural light. Come play, she whispered, a smile spreading across her lips in a way that sent chills down my spine. I faltered, unable to process the sight before me. The familiarity of her presence reeked of memories I couldn't quite grasp. Instinctively, I clutched the wooden toy tighter. What do you want from me? The question slipped from my lips before I could think. Help them, she implored, her voice a low hum that seemed to vibrate in the air. They've been waiting. Before I could respond, the attic door creaked open, flooding the room with light. My heart sank. I had expected Daniel, but it was just an overwhelming rush of uncertainty spilling from the open door. The mysterious woman took a step forward, and shadows slithered around her, closing in. I turned to bolt towards the doorway, throwing caution to the wind. But I hesitated, casting one last look at the trunk. What were the shadows waiting for? I started for the door, fueled by instinct rather than logic. Daniel! I yelled again, the urgency radiating from me. The light coming from the hallway flickered, like a candle being snuffed out. Then everything went dark. I felt fingers grasp at my shoulder, pulling me backward into the depths of the shadows. Despair washed over me as I struggled against the unseen force. I had to get Daniel out of here. We needed to escape whatever was haunting this house. Suddenly, I remembered the diary. Maybe it held the key to understanding this nightmare. My mind raced. I had to find a way back to it, before it was too late, or risk being lost to the darkness forever. The darkness pressed in from all sides, swallowing the familiar sounds of my frantic breathing. I kicked and thrashed, but the grip on my shoulder only tightened, as if the shadows had become a living force, savoring my fear. Let go of me. I managed to gasp, wrenching my body to break free. With one last desperate push, I tore myself from the unseen grip. I stumbled forward and crashed into something solid. Instinctively, I reached out and grasped the trunk. My fingers found the wooden toy inside. Help them, the woman's voice echoed in my mind. Who was she? And whom did she mean? My heart raced again as I fought to shove aside the panic. I needed clarity. I needed to know what was going on. I took a deep breath and turned to the trunk. The diary lay open, beckoning to me like a lighthouse in the storm. I could barely make out a few words in the dim light. Trapped shadows play. It was a jumble of phrases, each one sparking a question in my mind. The shadows? What did they have to do with the woman? A sudden noise pierced the silence like a soft thud from the attic above. Goosebumps flashed along my skin. What else was in this house? I wanted to find Daniel, but I could feel the pull of the attic. Just as I lifted my foot to take a step toward the door, the air shifted. A whirlwind of low whispers circled me, urging me to stay. I hesitated, wrestling with my own instincts. They wanted me to leave. More importantly, I wanted to leave. What are you? I called into the darkness, hating how small my voice sounded. There was no reply, just the haunting echoes of the shadows. I could still feel the icy remnants of their grip, the fear still alive in my chest. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a flash of movement from the diary. The pages flipped wildly, revealing more scattered notes. Find the key. The word stood out like a beacon, but key to what? I was losing precious time, but the attic tempted me. I needed more answers and it felt like it could contain them. I grabbed the diary and the wooden toy, clutching them tightly as I stepped towards the door, heart hammering like a thud against a drum. As I breached the threshold, the flickering light from the attic spilled over me, illuminating the path ahead. I hesitated at the top of the stairs, listening. Everything felt suspended in time. Somehow, in this disorienting limbo, I knew something was waiting for me up there. Daniel! I shouted again, voice raw and desperate, hoping he'd respond. I heard shuffling noises, then silence as if whatever was up there had evaporated. I stepped forward, readying myself for whatever lay ahead. But the moment I crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening crash. My heart stopped. I was trapped. A whisper coursed through the air around me. You've come to play. My thoughts spun. I needed to act. But as I stood there, the shadows began to surge towards me once more, twisting and weaving through the edges of the light. They were alive, hungry. In that moment, I understood I was not just a visitor in this house. I was part of the game. The air grew colder as the shadows pressed closer, their presence suffocating. I clutched the diary and toy, my lifelines in this sea of darkness. Get back! I shouted, but I wasn't sure if I was speaking to the shadows or to myself. Panic clawed at me, threatening to take over entirely. I spun around, searching for a way out. The attic felt more claustrophobic than before. Only the flickering light illuminated my surroundings, revealing bare beams and dust-covered corners. Beneath my feet, the wooden boards creaked ominously. I took a cautious step back, and something crunched underfoot. My heart raced again as I looked down. A shattered mirror lay scattered across the floor, the pieces glinting in the light. Find the key, I whispered. The diary's words echoed in my mind, but finding a key might require digging a little deeper. I couldn't ignore the shards. One of them was different, larger, smoother. I picked it up cautiously, and a faint reflection caught my eye. The face looking back was twisted. Sucking in a breath, I realized it wasn't my face. Dark eyes stared out at me, filled with sadness and fear. I dropped the shard in horror. It clinked against the wooden floor, the sound slicing through my breath like a knife. I felt terror clawing at my insides, urging me to flee, but I couldn't let whatever this was intimidate me. The whispers around me deepened, forming incomprehensible sentences that danced just out of reach of my understanding. Help them the key, they nagged at me like a song stuck in my head. I needed to snap out of this fear. I had to find Daniel. I had to understand. I stepped carefully toward where the noise had come from earlier. "Daniel!" I called out, more bravely this time. I hoped my voice would break the shadow's hold. But there was only silence in response. I felt distant, as if I was shouting into an empty void. I caught sight of a staircase leading downward, its steps steep and worn. A small part of me screamed to turn back, to return to the safety of the door. But I was desperate. I couldn't see any other option. I hopped over the shards of the mirror and descended the stairs, my heart loud in my ears. The air grew thick as I reached the bottom. A door, seemingly untouched, stood at the corridor's end, slightly ajar. Light spilled out from within, illuminating a path forward. I inched closer, feeling the warmth from the room. As I stepped through the doorway, a rush of sound assaulted my senses: laughter, soft and chilling. "You're too late," a voice chimed, feminine yet eerily sing-song. The tone sent chills racing down my spine. Then, everything went dark. I gasped as the sensation of being pulled backward overcame me. The shadows returned, curling around my legs, lifting me off the ground. I kicked and flailed, but they only grew denser, intertwined, refusing to let go. Through the blackness, the voice echoed again. "The game has only just begun." I had walked into a trap, and now I was part of a much darker play. And as the shadows enveloped me, I realized I was not alone. Something or someone was waiting for me in the dark. The darkness tightened around me like a vice, squeezing out all hope. I twisted and turned, panicking as shadows slithered over my skin. My breath came in short gasps, each exhale mixing with the laughter that echoed around the void, mocking me. I could feel something stirring just beyond the reach of my vision. If I closed my eyes, maybe it would all just go away. But deep down, I knew that would only make it worse. I needed to fight, to regain control. Determined, I focused on the voices, trying to pull something coherent from the chaos around me. "Help them, find the key," they whispered, just outside the edges of my consciousness. My mind raced. Was there really a key? The mention of a key triggered something: a flicker of a memory, the diary's cryptic message. It felt important, but the shadows were too thick. I could hardly think. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pull, like a thread being yanked taut. One moment, I was hanging in the dark, and the next, I was thrown into a space that felt different. The laughter faded, but the chill remained. I blinked, disoriented, and struggled to stand. I was in a room filled with flickering candles, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. The air smelled damp, heavy with the scent of mildew. I looked around, desperate for a sign, a clue, anything that could point me to the next step. And that's when I saw it. In the corner, a dark figure loomed, though it seemed to recede into the shadows. My heart pounded. I squinted, trying to make sense of it. "Who's there?" I called out, forcing my voice to remain steady. The figure stirred, and I felt an unnatural chill sweep through the room. "Welcome," the voice came, smooth and calming, yet somehow unnerving. "You've been chosen to join the game." "Game?" I echoed, confusion mingling with fear. "What are you talking about? Where's Daniel? You cannot save him unless you find the key." There was a pause, the silence stretching painfully long. "He is hidden, just like you." I felt a deep ache in my chest. "What do you mean?" The figure stepped forward, closer to the candlelight. My breath caught in my throat. I recognized the face. It was the mirror shard. Not just anyone's face, but mine, twisted, distorted, and haunted. I stumbled back. "This is your path," it rasped. "But you have to play by the rules." "I refuse," I shouted, pushing the fear aside. "Just tell me where Daniel is." My words hung in silence, swallowed by the flickering shadows. "Find the key, and all shall be revealed," it replied cryptically. "But beware, not everything is as it seems." Trust no one, especially not yourself. Its words replayed in my mind like a taunting song. I hated how they hovered, unanswered, in the back of my brain. The shadows around me shifted, subtle but alive, as if they were waiting for something to happen. And just as I began to consider my next move, a loud crash echoed nearby, startling me. What cruelty awaited behind the sudden noise? I realized the shadows were lurking, merging closer. And as I turned to face the sound, I felt a familiar chill creep along my spine. I was not alone after all. The game was just beginning, and I had to find the key before the darkness trapped me forever. The crash echoed again, louder this time, and something shifted in the corner of the room. My heart raced. I had to move. The shadows were closing in, and I felt their cold fingers reach for me. I glanced around for a way out, but the candles flickered as though they were alive, dancing to the rhythm of my fear. Find the key, I repeated under my breath. Desperation clawed at my throat, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed to understand what this game was all about. I stepped cautiously toward the noise, my knees shaking beneath me. Each step felt like a challenge, the air heavy with anticipation. Then, just as I reached the edge of the candlelight, the source of the noise became clear. A heavy wooden door stood ajar, its hinges creaking ominously as they swayed. It felt like a portal to another world, one filled with even more darkness. I bit my lip. Should I go through? Could there be answers on the other side? I peered inside, but all I could see was an inky blackness that swallowed everything. Before I could second-guess myself, the urge to move forward took over. I pushed the door open wider, the cold air rushing past me like a whisper of a warning. As I stepped inside, something brushed against my ankle, a whisper of fabric. I gasped, looking down. A small piece of cloth lay on the floor, tattered and frayed, resembling part of a tunic. My memory lit up. It was the same material Daniel had worn last Halloween, before everything had changed. I knelt, clutching it in my hand. The moment felt significant, as though it would lead me closer to the truth. A sudden gust of wind blew through the room, extinguishing the candles, plunging me into darkness. My pulse quickened as I strained my eyes, but I couldn't see anything. Panic swelled in my chest. Daniel! I shouted, panic creeping in as my surroundings shifted, warping under the weight of my dread. And then, I heard it, a faint whisper, almost imperceptible beneath the overwhelming silence. Help me, it echoed around me, withdrawn and urgent. The plea stirred something deep within me, something I couldn't quite grasp. Daniel? I called out again, my voice trembling as I felt the chill gather around me like a storm. Is that you? The whisper again, louder, help me, it came from the depths of the darkness, a beckoning familiar and terrifying at once. I had to help him, but how? The questions burned in my mind, but deep down, I felt the weight of the figure's warning, trust no one, especially not yourself. I took a slow breath, gathering my scattered thoughts. I needed to navigate this unknown, even if it meant facing the very shadows that haunted me. I had to find the key to set us free. I had to face the place where I felt trapped. But just as I was about to make sense of my next step, footsteps approached, a shuffling, purposeful sound that sent me into alarm. Who's there? I shouted, dread pooling in my stomach. The room darkened even more, and a hand seemed to reach for me from the depths of the shadows. I recoiled, heart racing, dread pooling in my stomach. I was not alone, and the game had only just begun. I took a step back into the darkness, adrenaline flooding my veins. The voice's plea reverberated in my mind, but my urge to emerge from this nightmare clashed with the incipient fear of what was coming. I couldn't risk being trapped by whatever lurked in the shadows. Suddenly, the whispers intensified, swirling around me like an ominous storm. Help me, it echoed, growing more insistent, more frantic. I needed to figure out where it was coming from. Daniel! I shouted, my voice desperate. Daniel, came repeated in a sing-song tone from behind. I flinched, twisting to confront the voice, a childlike laughter cutting through the gloom. The figure emerged, lithe and ethereal, a silhouette of shadows with a familiar outline. My heart stopped as those haunting eyes locked onto mine. It was his friend. "Come play with us," she sang gleefully, the shadows dancing playfully around her. My gut twisted as I felt her presence wrap around me like an embrace, but I couldn't let that happen. "Where's Daniel?" I demanded, trying to sound formidable despite the tremor in my voice. "He's safe with us. He's playing." The girl's grin widened with sinister joy. "Stop it." I shot back. "I need to find him." "You know where he is." She only giggled, her form flickering like a dying flame. And that's when I felt it, the thrill of an idea sparked in my brain. What if the key wasn't just a physical object? What if it was about understanding the bond that tethered her to this place? "Why are you doing this?" I pressed, grounding myself as I remembered the comforting weight of the toy in my pocket. "What do you want?" Her laughter erupted, filling the air with chilling melodies. "To play," she said, innocence tainted by something far darker. "Come, we have games to share." I forced myself to look past her to confront the shadows swirling like tempestuous thoughts. Somewhere in their depths stood the truth, as terrifying as it was steeped in obscurity. The darkness trembled in anticipation. I wasn't just facing a spectral child but a reckoning of choices long ignored. "Daniel!" I shouted again, louder this time, summoning every ounce of bravery. "You have to help me. Remember what those shadows did when you played?" For a moment, I felt an energy shift. The girl stepped closer, her face contorting into a mask of confusion. "He needs to come, too," she whined, folding her arms. "No," I retorted, grasping the toy tighter as clarity struck like a bolt of lightning. "You want him to be part of your game, but you don't need him. You're trapped in this place too, aren't you?" The shadows froze momentarily, the laughter died down, and the corners of her ethereal form flickered uncertainly. "Trapped?" she echoed, tilting her head. "Yes," I said, finding my voice steady against the fear. "You were meant to guide him, but now you're lost and lonely. I can free you both." Her eyes glimmered with a flickering light that mirrored the candle's dying flames. "Free? If we work together," I continued, sensing my moment to seize power against the dark force that sought to ensnare us both. "You don't have to play anymore. Help me find the key that will free you and Daniel." The air thickened as the shadows seemed to sway, contemplating my words. "Key?" she repeated, almost in a dreamlike haze. "Yes. Can you remember? A key that opens a door?" As I spoke, the shadows grew restless, whispering among themselves as if they were both drawn and repulsed by my proposition. "I want to go home," she murmured, the shadows around her flickering with uncertainty. "Then help me." But before she could respond, I saw the glimmer of something shiny on the attic floor, a key, twisted and ethereal, buried beneath dirt and debris. "There." I pointed. "That could be it. Can you help retrieve it?" She drifted closer to me, the hesitance thawing away. "You mean if I help you, we both can be free?" "Yes," I affirmed, hope blooming against the dread enveloping me. As she extended a shadowy hand toward the key, I felt an unexpected surge of bravery. I had come to reclaim not just my son's safety but also to liberate the lost spirits of this house. The girl reached inside the shadows, her hand just a touch lighter than the ambient gloom, and pulled the key from its dusty prison. In that moment, I felt the air shift. The shadows around us pulsated, swirling wildly, desperate to prevent the inevitable. But I pressed on, shouting, "Daniel! If you can hear me, come to me. We're going to get out." A moment later, I felt a tug at my heart, a connection sharpening through the gloom. "Mom!" Daniel's voice called faintly from the depths. "Turn the key." I urged the girl, whose eyes reflected the uncertainty of what was next. She held it high, glimmering under the dim light, her face illuminated with understanding. Okay, let us go home. Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, swirling around us in a last-ditch attempt to reclaim their power. But I wrapped my arms around the girl and called out to Daniel with all my heart. Please, come to me. With that, there was an inferno of light, and the shadows recoiled, hissing in discontent as the key turned. Moments melted into one another, time seemed to blur, and I felt us pulled together like magnets after an eternity of solitude. And just like that, the swirling darkness erupted into a flash of light. I shielded my eyes, the warmth enveloping us and my heart racing. Had we escaped? Moments later, the intense power faded, and I stood in the attic once more, breathless. The dust hung in the rays of cold morning light that streamed through the window. I turned quickly. There was Daniel, standing there, wide-eyed but unscathed. "Mom?" he asked, bewildered but safe. I scooped him into my arms, my heart swelling with relief and disbelief. "We're okay," I whispered through a wave of mixed relief and lingering terror, even as shadows danced at the edges of the room. The girl, a fleeting silhouette, hovered in the corner, her form shimmering like mist. "Thank you," she echoed softly before vanishing altogether. I held Daniel tighter, the chaos still pressing at the walls of my heart. The house felt lighter, yet it held its mysteries still unresolved, unanswered. Questions lingered like faint echoes. Where had the girl gone? Did the key truly break the hold? But as I looked down at Daniel, warmth flooding through me, I knew I had escaped the immediate danger. Everything had changed, and the past would always sway like the shadows in the corners. I had survived. But would they come back? What would I do when they did? The house stood quiet, its secrets far from hidden, leaving me with a burning uncertainty, an uneasy peace in the depths of my core. I was safe. But some doors would forever be left ajar.